Time can't fix 2042. Hey guys, welcome to today's video, and it's a video that, quite honestly, I'm heartbroken to be making, and I didn't want to make, whether it be because of denial or the fact that I want to enjoy the game so bad. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure I've been living under the same delusion that a lot of you guys may have, that time is slowly gonna fix this game, and that 7 months in, the game might be as good as Battlefield 4, because that's how it was in the past. But honestly, after playing for so many hours at this point, I think I'm at, let me check here, I'm at 158 hours according to Origin. Obviously that's not entirely accurate because of stuff like lingering in the menu when I'm doing other stuff. But I think it's safe to say that I have over 100 hours, and at that 100-hour mark, I've finally come to realize that time can't save this game. The problem with Battlefield 2042 is its maps. The maps are the baseline problem, they are the biggest problem, and I don't know if people have realized this yet, or if they're going to start realizing it, but it's just a fact of the matter. And the fact of the matter is that maps aren't something that DICE can really fix in time. Unless they plan on completely remodeling some of these maps and redoing the entire thing, which we all know isn't going to happen, then a good chunk of the map pool is gonna remain just miserable to play on. And no, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you all these things and not give you any examples, so let's actually jump into what's wrong with Battlefield 2042's maps, and why exactly I don't think time can save this game, which makes me really sad. First thing on here, and that's that every single one of Battlefield 2042's maps seems to have been designed with the vehicle call-down system in mind. And this may be a bold claim, but I personally feel that the vehicle call-down system was the worst change in 2042. I know, might be radical, especially with things like specialists that people are really upset about, but hear me out here, because the vehicle call-down system may have single-handedly ruined this game. What do I mean when I say that the maps were designed around the vehicle call-down system? Well, in previous Battlefield games, it would have been perfectly acceptable to decide that you were going to run between point A and point B, and you could do that in a reasonable amount of time. In Battlefield 2042, however, that is not even close to the case. Let's just take a look at the D flag on Breakaway. If you were to spawn at the Delta flag on Breakaway, the closest flags would be 380 and 360 meters away respectively, with the next closest being 500 meters away. If that doesn't speak towards what I'm telling you, I don't know what else will. Now to drive the point home, if we hop over to Battlefield 4 and join a match of Dawnbreaker, you can see that the furthest flag from your home flag is 300 meters away. The furthest one. Now, how exactly Battlefield 2042's closest flag to you can be as far away as the enemy's spawn flag in one of Battlefield 4's maps is mind-blowing to me. I don't know who thought that was a good idea from the game direction standpoint, but here we are, they did it. Now someone's probably gonna tell me that this is an unfair comparison because Dawnbreaker is a small city map. So fine, we'll go play Operation Mortar instead. Furthest flag from your spawn flag, 350 meters away, along with a variety of flags you can go to within 100 to 200 meters. I think we're starting to see a trend here. Now, yes, I know there are going to be people that say Breakaway is a bad example because it is the largest map in Battlefield history. And let me ask you this, since when did having a map be large mean that you had to cover a ridiculous amount of distance between every single flag on the map? Just because a map is big doesn't mean that it needs to be empty. And I think this is something that the DICE developers obviously didn't understand while creating all of their maps. As it stands right now, the only viable way to get between one flag to another flag is a transport vehicle. And I've already discussed the problems with the transport vehicles in another video, Battlefield 2042's transport vehicle problem. So rather than restate everything in that video, basically, because of how strong the transport vehicles are, a lot of the time once you get in one, you don't get out of one, which makes the whole game driving around in transport vehicles. But the issue is, even if that transport vehicle problem didn't exist, it would still force you to call in a Jeep to get between points, or run a ridiculous length. And when you consider the fact that there's only 9 transport vehicles available on Breakaway, the largest map, and there's 64 players on your team, no chance can everyone get a vehicle. So when it comes down to it, at every point of the match, more than half of your team is running between objectives. It's just the way it is. And running, as a surprise to no one, is not fun. It doesn't mean there aren't ways to circumvent it, like transport helicopters and spawn beacons. But the thing is, in past games, you didn't have to circumvent it, because you could just run between the objectives. Now, the problem with all this empty space isn't just limited to not being able to get transport vehicles to get to objectives, but it also involves entire parts of the map, most of the game not being used. And for this example, we move over to Hourglass. Two of the most interesting parts of Hourglass are the stadium and the city. Hands down, I don't think anyone would argue with me on that. The problem is, fights in the city and in the stadium tend to either, number one, never happen, or number two, one team comes out on top, and then that's just the way it is for the rest of the game. Now, why this happens is extremely simple, and I think a toddler could figure it out. Take a look at the map. Now pay attention to the absolutely absurd distance between any of the other sectors and your deployment and the Echo sector, which is the city. Now, if one team takes control of Echo sector, how exactly is the other team expected to take it back? The answer, it doesn't happen. And that's because even if you call in a transport vehicle, you've got a long drive over there, then you die a single time, and guess what? You gotta do it all again. Now, how many people do you think are actually gonna constantly go through the effort of spawning in a transport vehicle, driving or running for 5 minutes, getting over there, and then dying and having to do it all over again? The answer, nobody's gonna do that. And so if you've ever been to any of my streams, you'll see a very, very often case of me alone in the city against their entire team, because nobody on my team could be bothered to get their squad together and go over there because it's such a ridiculous distance. And I can't even blame people for doing that. Sure, it makes me angry while I'm by myself in the city, but who would want to constantly run 800 meters to get to the city to die and then have to spawn back and do it again? And the answer is nobody. Why DICE decided to have the most interesting parts of this map so far away from everything else is beyond me. I have no idea. The thing is that I feel like a lot of 2042's maps people would be a lot more forgiving of if they were just smushed together like Battlefield 4's maps are. I don't know why DICE thought that bumping up the player count meant adding 125% more empty space, when all they really needed to do was add 125% more playable space, so that people would actually play in these areas. But you know what? I think what it actually comes down to is the fact that 128 players in Battlefield 2042 means nothing. And I would love for someone to tell me otherwise, because I cannot for the life of me come up with a single reason that 128 players was a good idea. And this is something that it does pain me to say, and I have to go back and say I was wrong. 100%. I fucked up, and I think that every single other person that asked for 128 players and was always thinking to themselves, man, it's so weird, why don't they just raise the player count? It's been 64 for so many years. Well, it turns out it looks like it was 64 for a reason, because from what I've played, 128 players doesn't add anything to any of the matches I've played. All 128 players seems to do is make it so your personal impact on a match is more meaningless than ever, and that's really about it. I can't tell you the amount of times that I've gone onto a flag, killed 6 people, which should, in theory, make an impact, and then die to another 3 or 4 because there's so many people on the flag. Did that happen in Battlefield 4 and other Battlefields? Absolutely it did. But not nearly as many times as it does in 2042, because there's just so many more people. They see the flag getting taken, and 6 people spawn on the flag instead of 3. 3 people I might be able to deal with. 6, no chance. What I'm trying to say is I think that even if the maps were halfway decent, 128 players would still make it feel bad. The biggest thing that I think they could ever do to fix 2042's maps and maybe fix the game is to add more flags in between all of the flags that we have so that there's more spawn points and there aren't sectors on the map that once they're taken, never get taken back. But even if they did that, it wouldn't take away from the core problem of the game, and that's that you mean jack shit in this game if you're not in a helicopter or a vehicle. The more and more I play Battlefield 2042, the more I see Conquest as Vehicle Farming Simulator 2042, because that's what the game has become at this point. People are going to tell me, inevitably, that the game has always been like this. Battlefield games have always been Vehicle Farming Simulator 2042, and you're not wrong. The past Battlefield games, for the most part, have people going 80 and 0 in vehicles. It's nothing new, it's always there. But this time around, it feels like they were absolutely trying their best to make playing as an infantry the most painful it can ever be. Between getting vultured randomly while running the 300 meters to the points, the transport vehicles being absolutely everywhere and just shredding infantry, or the fact that there's more tanks than ever. And overall, what the end result is infantry players in Conquest getting killed over and over and over and over again to vehicles without any chance to fight back because there's nothing on these maps to protect them. If you want to move between point A and point B, you need a transport vehicle. Even if you get a transport vehicle, the helicopter can still kill you. So you either run the 300 meters and die to a helicopter, or drive the 300 meters and die to a helicopter. Regardless, you're dying to a helicopter. And no amount of FXM-33 AA missiles is stopping that helicopter from killing you in one strafe. Maybe I'm alone, I don't think so, but when I play Conquest, I would say a good 3/4 of my deaths as a soldier come from getting killed while I'm out in the open by a vehicle trying to get from one place to another. And that really, really sucks. We're not done yet though, of course not. What I believe is the final thing that I have to touch on about how horrible these maps are, and that is exactly what it promotes when it comes to playing on the maps as an infantry. We've talked about the extreme distances between the points. We've talked about how it's a serious pain in the ass in order to actually get there. We've talked about all of that. So in the end, what does this promote? Well, it promotes people sitting there in one spot, not moving, because in between you and the next place to go is certain death. And people don't like dying, so they just say, forget it, and everyone clumps up in one spot. It happens almost every single game. And honestly, through words, I can't really describe it very well. So you just watch this clip from my stream and it speaks for itself. So if you take a look at the map, this is a great, absolutely phenomenal way to showcase the problem, like the biggest problem with the map design and the fact that it takes so long to run between objectives. Look at all the blue fucking triangles on this area. That's like 80% of our team. That's maybe 50 players all in one spot. And then look at the rest of the map. There's 2 people over here, 1 person here, 1 person here, 3 people over here, and 50 fucking people here. Now, why does this happen? Not because these are the best places to fight, although that is true. They are the best places to fight. It happens because who the fuck over at D wants to run 300 meters to E, 300 meters, or probably 400 meters back to A, or 400 to 500 meters to B? Nobody. Nobody wants to do that. So they just hang out. They sit here because I was just doing it. You saw me running in circles. I was running in circles because I didn't want to run. It's subconscious. You're like, I don't want to run 300, 400 meters. So you don't. And you just sit there and then nothing happens. And then you have 50 people all in the same spot, not doing anything. It happens. That's the way it goes. That's just the way it goes is the best way to sum it up. This isn't a niche example. Pay attention in your games if you're playing. I would say roughly 80 to 90% of your team will be in one spot for most of the match every single game you play. which, if you think about it, kind of defeats the whole purpose of the 128 players and, oh yeah, that whole big map thing, because everyone's in the same spot because they don't want to go anywhere else, because if they do, they'll get nuked on the way there. Ah, it's just a mess. So what's the end game here? I said at the start of the video that time won't fix 2042, and I think I can stand by that at the end of this video, and I feel like a lot of you guys, after watching through the whole thing, can probably see what I'm getting at. Between the ridiculously large maps, the transport vehicles that you are forced to use in order to get between flags, and the fact that there's 128 players, I just don't see the game ever getting to Battlefield 4 status, because those problems are things that would be incredibly difficult to fix, and I don't think the effort's going to be there. I don't think there isn't a solution. In fact, I think there's a really good solution, but it would be a hard one to do, and DICE won't do it. And that solution is Conquest Small, or more like Conquest Normal, if we're being honest. In previous Battlefield games, you could have Conquest Large and Conquest Small. Conquest Small had 32 players, Conquest Large had 64. So now, if we could have in the All Out Warfare tab a Conquest Normal or a Conquest Small that had 64 player maps with 32 players on each team, I think that alone would go a distance in helping the game feel less, well, horrible. But in that sense, 64 player maps isn't going to solve the whole problem with the game. No, because even on the 64 player maps, which if you're curious, I'm not gonna bother going to load them up, so I apologize. But if you are curious, you can load up a bot game and see that the 64 player maps all share the same problems that the 128 player maps do. There's still a ridiculous amount of empty space between flags, and there's still not enough flags. So what would need to be done is to reduce the player count back down to 64 and add a bunch of flags onto those maps to make it less running simulator, more being able to play the game. But will that happen? Absolutely not. No chance in hell. And obviously, that's just my perfect solution. I'm sure a lot of the people that are playing right now are more than happy with the game that they've got. And honestly, I'm here sitting at probably over level 100 by the time you're watching this, so I must enjoy the game at least a little bit, otherwise that just wouldn't be possible. And I truly believe that you have to love a game enough to hate a game. And here we are, that exact scenario. And it's exactly why I'm so devastatingly crushed that the biggest problem, which is the maps, likely can never be fixed. That is just heartbreaking. Anyways, finally, that's gonna wrap up the video. There's nothing else I have to say. I will definitely be curious to see if people agree with me here, or if there's some outrage, or if, par for the course, no one really cares because, you know, nobody watches this channel. But hey, who knows? We'll see. Let me know what you think about all of it in the comments. I don't have anything else to say. I'm just exasperated at this point. If you enjoyed the video, you can leave a like, subscribe. If you didn't, don't do those things. And with all that being said, have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you next time.